was a late summer afternoon when Leela decided to escape the city's relentless heat. The beach, with its endless stretch of golden sand and the rhythmic lull of the waves, seemed like the perfect getaway. She had always found solace by the ocean, a place where her worries were washed away with the tide. This time, though, the beach was different, eerily quiet, as if nature itself held its breath. Leela set up her spot near the water's edge, where the gentle waves lapped at her feet. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced on the sand. She settled into her beach chair with a book in hand, but her mind wandered. It was a lonely stretch of coastline, devoid of the usual weekend crowds, and the stillness felt unsettling. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Leela noticed a figure in the distance. A man stood near a rocky outcrop, staring out at the ocean. He was dressed in dark clothes, his back to her. She squinted, trying to make out his features, but he remained an enigma. After a moment, he turned slightly, and she caught a glimpse of his face, a weathered expression, eyes shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. Feeling a chill despite the warm air, Leela returned to her book. She lost herself in the pages, but an instinctual nagging tugged at her. She glanced back at the figure. He was still there, unmoving, as if waiting for something or someone. She shook her head, attributing her unease to her overactive imagination. As night fell, the beach transformed. The ocean glimmered under the moonlight, and the stars twinkled like distant beacons. Leela packed her things, ready to head home, but the man had vanished. A sense of relief washed over her, quickly replaced by a creeping dread. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Driving home, the shadows in the rearview mirror seemed to stretch ominously, and the wind whistled through the trees lining the road. She turned up the radio, hoping to drown out the strange sensation gripping her. It was a relief to reach her apartment, where she locked the door behind her, feeling a fleeting sense of safety. That night, she tossed and turned, her dreams invaded by visions of the man on the beach. His haunting eyes and the sound of whispering waves lingered in her mind. When morning came, she dismissed it all as a figment of her imagination, but a nagging curiosity compelled her to return to the beach. The next day was overcast, the sky a slate gray that matched her mood. Leela arrived early, the beach deserted once again. As she walked along the shore, she noticed something half buried in the sand, an old, rusted locket. Intrigued, she picked it up, brushing away the sand to reveal a delicate engraving, two intertwined initials, M and J. A chill raced down her spine as she remembered the man's gaze. Had he left this behind? She turned to look at the rocky outcrop, but it was empty. The beach felt different today, heavy with an oppressive silence that seemed to swallow her whole. Leela felt compelled to explore the rocks, drawn by an unseen force. Climbing the jagged formations, she discovered a small cave hidden from view. Inside, the air was damp and cool. The walls glistened with moisture, and she could hear the distant sound of water dripping. As she ventured deeper, she found remnants of old fishing gear, weathered and forgotten. Something glinted in the corner of her, a tattered photograph pinned to the wall. Curiosity piqued. She stepped closer. The image was faded, but she could make out two figures, M and J, standing on the very beach she now occupied, smiles bright and carefree. Beneath the photo, a date was scrawled, August 15, 1975. The realization hit her like a wave. The locket belonged to one of them. Suddenly, the air around her thickened, and the whispers began. At first, they were faint, like the rustling of leaves, but they grew louder, more insistent, filling the cave with a chorus of unintelligible voices. Panic surged through Leela, and she stumbled backward, feeling the cave walls close in around her. Desperate to escape, she turned to flee, but as she reached the entrance, she felt a cold hand grasp her wrist. She whirled around, and there he was, the man from the beach, his face now twisted with an expression of sorrow and anger. "You shouldn't have come here," he rasped, his voice echoing like a long-lost memory. Leela struggled against his grip, her heart racing. "Who are you?" she gasped, fear coursing through her veins. "I was a fool," he whispered, "and now I am bound to this place, lost in time. They won't let me leave, and they won't let you either." The whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a tempest. The cave felt alive, pulsing with the weight of sorrow and regret. Images flashed before her eyes, waves crashing, a boat capsizing, and two figures, desperately reaching for each other but always just out of reach. Lila realized the truth. The beach held more than just memories. It held the spirits of those who had perished there, trapped between worlds. The locket was a tether, a reminder of a love lost and a promise broken. "Please, I just wanted to know," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "How can I help you?" "Leave this place," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the cacophony. "Forget what you found. You must not become part of their sorrow." With a surge of adrenaline, Lila broke free from his grasp and fled the cave, stumbling down the rocks and onto the sand. She ran, not stopping until she reached her car, where she fumbled with the keys, her hands trembling. As she sped away from the beach, the whispers faded, but the weight of what she had uncovered clung to her like a shroud. Days turned into weeks, but the memory of that day haunted her. Lila tried to forget, burying herself in work and friends, but the ocean called to her, its siren song impossible to resist. Each time she passed the beach, she felt a pull, an unexplainable connection that gnawed at her. One fateful evening, unable to fight the urge any longer, she returned. The beach was serene, but the air felt charged, heavy with anticipation. Lila stood at the water's edge, the moon casting a silvery glow on the waves. She took a deep breath, feeling the salt air fill her lungs, and stepped forward, surrendering to the tide. As she waded into the water, the whispers returned, clearer now, surrounding her with a cacophony of voices. They pulled at her, urging her deeper, promising her the secrets of the past. In that moment, Lila understood the choice she had made. She felt the cool water envelop her, pulling her down into the depths where time lost its meaning, and the echoes of love and loss would forever remain. The beach stood silent as the tide washed over the sand, erasing her footprints, leaving no trace of the woman who had come seeking solace but instead found herself forever bound to the whispers of the sea. The late summer sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the secluded beach where Mia found herself that afternoon. It had been years since she'd visited this stretch of coastline, a hidden gem her family frequented when she was a child. With her parents gone and the city's noise overwhelming her, Mia sought solace in the familiar sound of the waves. As she set up her beach blanket near a rocky outcrop, a sense of nostalgia washed over her. The air was thick with salt and the scent of sun-warmed sand. She closed her eyes, letting the rhythm of the waves ground her, but something tugged at her consciousness, a strange feeling of being watched. Mia opened her eyes, scanning the horizon. The beach was unusually empty. To her left, an old wooden pier jutted out into the sea, its weathered boards creaking as the wind passed through. To her right, the rocky cliffs loomed, rugged and ancient. Shrugging off her unease, she buried herself in a book, determined to enjoy the moment. Hours passed, and the sun dipped lower, casting an orange glow across the sky. Just as she began to relax, a sharp cry echoed from the direction of the pier. Mia's head snapped up, her heart racing. She squinted, trying to spot the source of the noise, but saw nothing. The beach remained still, save for the gentle crash of waves against the shore. Curiosity piqued, she decided to investigate. As she walked toward the pier, the sand felt cool beneath her feet, and the air thickened with a sense of foreboding. She reached the base of the structure, looking up at the decaying wood that seemed to groan under its own weight. The pier was empty, the only sound the distant call of seagulls. Feeling foolish, she turned to leave when she caught sight of something glimmering in the sand. She knelt to investigate, brushing aside the grains to reveal a small, ornate locket. Its surface was tarnished but beautifully crafted, featuring intricate designs etched into the metal. Intrigued, Mia opened it, revealing a faded photograph of a couple, their smiles frozen in time. On the back was a date, August 15, 1983. A chill ran down her spine. She felt a sudden connection to the couple, as if they were somehow intertwined with the beach itself. The moment was interrupted by a loud thump from the pier, sending a rush of adrenaline through her veins. Mia glanced back up, but still, there was nothing, no sign of life. Deciding to leave, she slipped the locket into her pocket and retraced her steps back to her blanket. As she settled down, the sun began its descent, casting the beach in deepening shadows. Just as she opened her book again, she heard the whispering, soft at first, like the rustle of leaves, but then growing more distinct. Mia, the sound was haunting, drifting through the air like a forgotten lullaby. She froze, her heart racing. Mia. It called again, clearer this time. The voice was soft yet urgent, pulling her in. With a sense of dread, Mia stood up and turned toward the cliffs. She thought she saw a figure standing at the edge, silhouetted against the fading light. It was just a glimpse, a shadowy outline that seemed to beckon her closer. Against her better judgment, she stepped forward. As she approached the rocky outcrop, the whispers intensified. "Mia, come to us." They echoed in her mind, weaving a tapestry of longing and sorrow. She felt as though the air itself was charged, alive with an energy she couldn't explain. Reaching the cliffs, Mia hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to turn back. But the call was magnetic. The figure appeared again, clearer now, a woman with long, dark hair cascading down her back, standing just out of reach at the water's edge. The woman's face was obscured, but her presence felt strangely familiar. "Mia." The voice was closer now, almost a whisper, drawing Mia in. "Help us." Before she could think, she found herself scrambling up the rocks, heart pounding. The sun had almost set, and the darkness seemed to swallow the landscape. As she reached the top, she scanned the area, but the woman was gone. Panic set in, and she called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" Silence enveloped her. Then, a rustling sound drew her attention to a small cave partially hidden by the rocks. Taking a deep breath, Mia approached the entrance, her curiosity overpowering her fear. Inside, the darkness felt palpable, almost tangible. She pulled out her phone for light, illuminating the damp walls and the remnants of what looked like old fishing gear scattered around. As she ventured deeper, the air turned cold, and the whispers returned, louder and more frantic. "Mia, help us." They echoed off the cave walls, sending chills down her spine. Mia felt as though she were standing on the precipice of something vast and unknowable. Suddenly, the ground beneath her shifted. Startled, she turned to leave but lost her footing, stumbling into the darkness. She landed hard on the cold stone floor, her phone skidding away from her. Heart racing, she scrambled to retrieve it, the beam of light flickering wildly. In that brief moment of illumination, she saw them shadows lurking at the cave's edges. Faces twisted in anguish, mouths moving but unable to form words. They were trapped, their eyes pleading, filled with a desperate longing that sent her heart into a panic. Mia scrambled backward, pressing against the cave wall. "What do you want from me?" she cried, her voice trembling. "Free us." The whispers became a chorus, rising in intensity. "We are lost, trapped." She felt the weight of their sorrow bearing down on her, a flood of emotions that threatened to consume her. How can I help you?" she shouted into the darkness. "Find us." A voice pierced through the chaos, clearer than the rest. "Find our resting place." With that, the cave grew still, the shadows dissipating into the darkness. The whispers faded, leaving Mia alone in the cold silence. She scrambled to her feet and raced back toward the entrance, adrenaline surging through her veins. Outside, the moon cast an eerie glow on the beach, illuminating her path as she stumbled back to the sand. Breathless and shaken, Mia stood still, her mind racing. Find their resting place, what could that possibly mean? The locket. She dug into her pocket, feeling the cold metal in her palm. It had to be connected to them. Determined, she made her way back to the pier. The tide was low, revealing more of the beach than before. She scanned the area, looking for anything that might indicate where they had once stood. As she searched, a glimmer caught her eye, another piece of jewelry, half buried in the sand. It was a ring, encrusted with seaweed and grime. Mia picked it up, brushing it off. On the inside, she found the same initials as the locket, MNJ. The realization hit her like a wave. These were the couple from the photograph. Their love story had been sealed in time, and somehow, she had become part of it. Feeling a pull, she walked toward the water, where the waves gently lapped at the shore. She remembered the date on the locket, August 15, 1983. She murmured, was there something special about that day? She glanced at the horizon, where the sun had disappeared, leaving a deep indigo sky. Suddenly, the whispers returned, swirling around her, mingling with the sound of the waves. "Help us, remember." Mia understood then. She needed to honor their memory. "I promise," she said aloud, her voice steady. "I'll help you find peace." As the tide began to rise, she walked into the water, holding the locket and ring tightly. "You're not forgotten," she whispered. "You will be remembered." The moment the waves touched her ankles, she felt a warmth envelop her. It was as if the spirits were gathering, grateful for her recognition. The whisper softened, transforming into a melodic hum that resonated within her. The water surged higher, and as it reached her waist, she felt the cold seep into her bones. Yet, there was no fear, only an overwhelming sense of connection. Mia closed her eyes, letting the waves pull her deeper. In that moment, she knew she had crossed into their world, leaving the troubles of her own behind. When the tide receded, the beach lay calm, the echoes of sorrow finally silent. Mia was gone, but her presence lingered, a promise fulfilled. And on that stretch of sand, the locket and ring lay together, glimmering softly under the moonlight, reminders of love lost and the spirit of a woman who dared to remember. It was a sweltering late August day when Claire decided to visit Crescent Beach, a hidden stretch of shoreline that had been a family favorite for years. With her parents now living abroad and her sister busy with work, Claire cherished the rare moments of solitude. She packed a cooler, grabbed her favorite beach chair, and set off, eager to escape the confines of her apartment. As she arrived, the late afternoon sun glinted off the waves, creating a mesmerizing dance of light on the water. The beach was mostly empty, save for a few distant figures dotting the shore. Claire settled into her chair, the salty breeze tangling her hair, and opened a book, quickly losing herself in the story. Time slipped by as she read, the sound of the waves providing a soothing backdrop. The sun dipped lower, casting golden hues across the horizon. Claire glanced up, momentarily distracted by the vibrant colors of the sunset. As she watched the sky transform, a flicker of movement caught her eye, a figure standing at the water's edge. Curious, she squinted to see better. It was a woman, dressed in a flowing white dress that billowed with the wind. Claire felt a strange sense of familiarity, though she couldn't recall ever having seen her before. The woman seemed lost in thought, gazing at the ocean, her back to Claire. After a few moments, Claire turned back to her book, dismissing the fleeting intrigue. As the sun sank further, she took a moment to stretch and breathe in the salty air. The beach was becoming quieter, the distant laughter of families fading as the sky darkened. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the calm. Claire's heart raced as she leapt to her feet, scanning the beach for the source. Her eyes landed on the woman, now frantically waving her arms. Claire could see her mouth moving, but the sound of the waves drowned out her words. Panic surged through her. She grabbed her phone and sprinted toward the woman, calling out, "Are you okay?" As she approached, the woman turned to face her. Claire gasped. The woman's face was pale, her eyes wide and filled with an intense fear. "Help me, please," she shouted, her voice cracking. "They're coming." "Who?" Claire asked, her own fear rising. Before the woman could answer, her gaze flickered past Claire, and her expression turned to one of pure terror. "You have to get away, now." Claire turned to see what the woman was looking at, but there was nothing there, just the darkening ocean and the remnants of the fading sun. Confusion gnawed at her. "What do you mean? What's happening?" The woman's breathing quickened. "The water, it's not safe, they're here." Before Claire could respond, the woman suddenly turned and ran toward the water, her dress billowing behind her like a ghostly veil. "No, stop," Claire shouted, but the woman plunged into the waves without hesitation, disappearing beneath the surface. A chill coursed through Claire. She stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Instinct kicked in, and she rushed to the water's edge, scanning the surface for any sign of the woman. "Come back," she yelled, but the ocean remained still, the waves crashing rhythmically as if mocking her. Just then, Claire noticed a group of figures emerging from the shadows at the far end of the beach. They were indistinct, moving silently, their faces obscured in the dim light. An unsettling feeling settled in her stomach. The beach, which had felt so inviting just moments ago, now felt suffocating and hostile. Panic surged as she turned back to the water, desperately trying to make sense of the woman's frantic warning. The tide began to swell, and she felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Claire stumbled back, heart racing. She had to leave now. As she sprinted back to her belongings, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Glancing over her shoulder, she saw the figures were closer now, their movements fluid and eerie. She fumbled for her keys, her hands trembling. The distant sound of laughter echoed in her ears, but it felt distant and warped, like a memory twisted by time. She felt the pull of the ocean, the waves whispering secrets just out of reach. Ignoring it, she jumped into her car, slamming the door behind her. The engine roared to life, and she sped down the beach road. But the road seemed to stretch on endlessly, the familiar landscape now a blur. Her mind raced as she replayed the woman's warning. What did she mean by they? Were the figures somehow connected to the ocean? Suddenly, her phone buzzed in the passenger seat. Heart pounding, Claire reached for it, grateful for the distraction. It was a message from her sister. Did you hear about the missing person? They found her stuff at Crescent Beach. A chill ran through her. Was the woman she'd seen the missing person? Had she just witnessed something terrible? As she drove, a wave of nausea washed over her. The air felt thick, and the darkness seemed to press against her, as if the night itself were alive. Rounding a bend, Claire spotted the flickering lights of a roadside diner. She pulled in, desperate for a moment of normalcy. Inside, the diner was nearly empty, the flickering neon sign casting a dull glow. Claire slid into a booth, ordering coffee, her hands still shaking. As she waited, she scanned the walls decorated with vintage photos of the beach, memories of families enjoying their time under the sun. But there was something unsettling about the smiles in those photographs, a strange sadness behind their eyes. The diner felt like a time capsule, frozen in an era long gone. The waitress brought her coffee, and Claire took a sip, trying to calm her nerves. You're not from around here, are you? The waitress asked, her tone casual but probing. No, just visiting for the day, Claire replied, forcing a smile. I went to Crescent Beach. The waitress's expression shifted. You should be careful there. There are stories. Things that happen near the water. What do you mean? Claire leaned in, intrigued despite her unease. The waitress glanced around, lowering her voice. Years ago, a family went missing. They were playing by the water when a storm hit. Only one of them came back, just a little girl, but she never spoke again. People say the water takes what it wants, and sometimes it doesn't give back. Claire felt a cold knot form in her stomach. The woman's warning echoed in her mind. Have there been more disappearances? Just whispers, the waitress said, shrugging. But every year, someone claims to see something strange out there, figures in the water, shadows moving. Most just brush it off, but some believe it's the lost souls. Claire couldn't shake the feeling of dread that settled over her. What happened to the girl? No one knows. She was found wandering the shore, but she never spoke about what happened. Some say she became part of the water, forever tied to it. A chill ran down Claire's spine. The weight of the waitress's words pressed heavily on her, and she knew she had to leave. She thanked the waitress and hurried back to her car, her mind racing with thoughts of the woman, the figures, and the dark history of the beach. As she drove away, the night deepened, enveloping the landscape in darkness. The road felt endless, twisting and turning like a labyrinth. The shadows loomed larger, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was following her. Suddenly, her headlights caught movement on the side of the road. A figure stood there, silhouetted against the trees. Heart racing, Claire slammed on the brakes. The figure was the woman from the beach, her dress now tattered and wet. Claire's stomach dropped. What are you doing? Get in, Claire shouted, but the woman remained still, her face blank and expressionless. They're coming for you, the woman said, her voice a haunting echo of despair. You can't escape. Before Claire could respond, the woman raised a hand, and the ground beneath her car trembled. The air thickened, and a sense of inevitability enveloped Claire. In a surge of panic, she threw the car into reverse, narrowly avoiding the figure as she sped back the way she had come. The beach loomed ahead, the waves crashing violently against the shore. Against her better judgment, she drove toward the water, drawn by an unseen force. The ocean swirled, frothing and alive, and as she parked, Claire felt a pull as if the water was calling her name. She stepped out of the car, heart pounding in her chest. The beach was eerily silent, the only sound the relentless crashing of waves. The figures from before emerged from the shadows, Their features now clearer, faces twisted in agony, mouths moving silently as they beckoned her closer. "Help us," they whispered in unison, their voices like a mournful choir. Claire's breath quickened, a mix of fear and confusion. She realized they were all connected: the woman, the lost souls, and the sea itself. Suddenly, the water surged forward, enveloping her ankles, then her waist. "No!" Claire cried, but she felt herself being pulled deeper, the tide rising around her. She fought against it, but the current was strong, and the whispers grew louder, drowning out her thoughts. In that moment, Claire understood. The ocean was hungry, and it had claimed its offerings, bound to the souls of those it had taken. The water churned around her, cold and unyielding, and as she sank beneath the surface, the weight of despair enveloped her. Time lost meaning. Claire floated in the depths, the whispers merging into a single voice. "You are one of us now. We are forever bound to the tide." As the last remnants of light faded, Claire surrendered to the darkness, becoming part of the ocean's haunting lullaby, forever lost in the depths of Crescent Beach. On the shore, her car remained parked, headlights flickering like fading stars, a silent testament to the woman who had come seeking solace, only to become another echo of the tide. Alright everyone, that brings us to the end of our story. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And if you have similar stories you'd like to share with us, feel free to reach out. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.